Howdy, folks. Welcome to our June edition of Cattle Trails Showcase. I'm Ron Wilson, Poet Laureate, pleased to be your host. Today, we welcome members and guests of the International Chisholm Trail Association and those who are watching on YouTube. I want to try a little something new today, and that is a monthly trivia question. So my plan is that each month, as we start our Cattle Trails Showcase, we will pose some Western trivia question, and we invite you to enter in the chat your name, your location, and the answer to that trivia question. Who knows, maybe we'll have some prize down the road. But for now, we're just going to do a little test run with a very simple trivia question, and we encourage you to enter in the chat your name, your location, and the answer to this question. What was the name of Roy Rogers' horse? That's a very easy question for anybody who's a Western fan. If you need a clue, he was the smartest horse in the movies, and he usually got credit above Dale Evans in the movie credits. So there you go. It's an easy question, so you get double credit for the first time. And we'll be doing this each month on Cattle Trails Showcase. I should explain that the Cattle Trails Showcase is brought to you by the International Chisholm Trail Association, of which Dennis Katzmeyer is president, Michael Brower is vice president, Nancy Lawrence, who's on, is our secretary, Mary Lou Rivers is our treasurer, and the chair of our showcase committee is Lonnie Stephen, who's on with us as well. The purpose of the Cattle Trails Showcase is to continually highlight the communities, historical elements, museums, and other attractions along the Chisholm and Western Trails. The sessions are scheduled every second Friday on each month, second Friday at 10 a.m. And so we hope you can join us each month, which brings us to a very special attraction along the trails today. And we're delighted to welcome our speakers, Jim and Gloria Austin. We're zooming down along the Chisholm Trail to the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. Some of you heard a little bit about this during our Chisholm Trail Conference last fall. We just got a taste, and folks wanted to hear more. And so we're delighted to learn more about the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. Our speakers are Jim and Gloria Austin, who founded this museum in 2001. Jim is a graduate of Howard University with a degree in business. He founded Austin Commercial Real Estate in 1981 in Fort Worth. He's a leader in the real estate business in the Fort Worth region today. He's also the founder of Jim Austin Online, which is a media channel promoting networking, entertainment, and cultural events. And in 2001, Jim and Gloria founded the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum, of which Gloria is the director. So here are Jim and Gloria Austin to tell us about the museum. Jim and Gloria, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here today. It's a great opportunity to showcase our museum and introduce it to those of you who are not familiar with it, and to welcome back old friends who have visited before or who have been a part of our organization all these many years. So we think this is a fantastic idea that you all have of doing this online so that people from all across the globe can join in. We have so many historians who are in different places that maybe don't have other people or history clubs or cultural clubs or anything like that. So this availability of being online is just a fabulous idea. And we're so thrilled that you're giving us the opportunity today to introduce the museum to a group of new folks. Jim, I'll kick it over to you and just let me know when you're ready to start the presentation slides.
Well, thank you, Gloria. It is definitely our pleasure to be here in front of you. Lauren and I did not know much about the history of the Forgotten Cowboys, and probably about 25, 26 years ago, a friend of mine, classmate from Howard University, approached me about a Cowboys of Color rodeo, and Gloria and I attended that rodeo, and we were just totally taken aback to learn that 30 to 40% of the Cowboys were people of color. Black, Hispanic, Native American, and white. And of course, I said, Gloria, let's go up on the internet and check it out. I didn't do it, she did it. So she went up there and she said, Jim, it's true. there's quite a bit of history, and we couldn't find anyone else, you know, sharing that information. So we took over the Cowboys of Color rodeo about 26 years ago. And right after that, about 2 years later, we decided to start this Western Heritage Museum. We were then the Cowboys of Color Museum, National Cowboys of Color Museum and Hall of Fame. And we decided to rename the museum about 10 years ago to its present name. And we just felt a need to share this information, particularly with kids of color, because we found out by sharing this information that it made them better students and wanting to learn more, that their ancestors played an important part. And we'll talk about the Buffalo Soldiers, we'll talk about the Native American cowboys, the Hispanic, on and on and on. But our museum recently, about 3 years ago, relocated from the near south side of Fort Worth to the historic stockyards. We felt that in order to tell the story better, what better place to be than in the middle of the action. So we leased the building, 8,000 square feet, and the museum is on the first floor. It's drop dead gorgeous. The building is about 112 years old now, and a lot of history. So we're there and invite everyone to come visit us. We're at 21st and Main. We always say 1 block south of the famous Joe T. Garcia restaurant. That's how you can find us. So it's our pleasure to be here to tell you about our passion. This is Gloria is the executive director. I am, and we're the co-founders, and I'm president of the board. And I'm assigned to go out and raise money and do anything that Gloria needs me to do. So today she called me, about a month ago. She said, Jim, you need to do this. So I'm here at your pleasure and service of my wife to make sure that, you know, happy wife, happy life. And that's a true mantra that I say all the time. And I tell you, even after this, my name is not Where's Gloria? My name is Jim Austin. So all my friends identify me when they see me. Where's Gloria? How's Gloria? I said, wait a minute, how's Jim? But I'll stop right there. And Gloria's got the presentation wired up. We did it for a group of students out of, I think, Houston. So a lot of information that you'll be pleasant to know and find out. So I'll stop right there, and then we can start whenever it's ready, Gloria, with the official presentation.
Go ahead.
I'm ready. Okay, ready to go. Well, that's good. The National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum is at 2029 North Main. Our website is cowboysofcolor.org, but it's also nmwhm.org. You'll find a lot of information about the forgotten cowboys when you go there. The picture on the left was created in regards to a little video that will show you in a little bit, but we just depict the importance of the history of the forgotten cowboys. It does not matter the color of your skin. It just matters if you're a good cowboy or a good cowgirl. There's me and my girlfriend, Gloria. You'll see right there standing in front of the museum. And we were so proud that Wrangler is one of our major sponsors, and they asked to do a story about the museum. And they came in with a photographer from Portland and did a great photo shoot. So if you go to Wrangler's network, you'll see the story and the history of the West. But we were founded in February 2nd of 2001. We're so excited to be celebrating 20 years of being around. And if you know anything about nonprofits and museum, to accomplish 20 years, that's a big feat, because some years we would look at each other and say, hey, how are we going to pay these bills? And then somebody would step up and give us a grant or some money. And then we put a lot of time into this. So thank you. When we started the museum, we said, hey, let's be able to tell the history of the West. And we started the Hall of Fame induction in 2003. So why not recognize one of the most popular cowboys, Bill Pickett? He's the father of bulldogging. He rode the plains of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas. And he in 71, he was inducted into our Hall of Fame. And he portrays the West. I mean, he is the father of bulldogging. And if you ask somebody if they know a Black cowboy, Bill Pickett. And when we inducted him, we were so fortunate to have members of his family come in town. And he worked on the 101 Ranch, and just a real cowboy. And he hung out with Will Rogers and a lot of folks, but he was just a great cowboy, and he lived the Western life. He did perform in Fort Worth at the Cowtown Coliseum in the stockyards, and just was a great cowboy. You know, you can study him and find information about him on our Hall of Fame.
No, go ahead.
Well, this one here, that year in 70, that we started the Hall of Fame, Charlie Sampson, world champion African-American bull rider. Charlie is just one of the most popular cowboys. We can pick up the phone right now and call him, he'll answer, and he'll start talking about, you know, being a cowboy. So we talk to him about once a month, and he'll probably come in for our Hall of Fame that's going to be this year. But just a great guy, a bull rider. And we have one of his world champion saddles in our museum. And he's been one of the biggest advocates of Western history and talking to kids. When Wrangler did that piece, they chose 5 individual historians and cowboys, and Charlie was one of them. And right now, you know, he still participates, he still rides. He does not ride bulls, he does calf roping, but just a great guy and a good looking cowboy and a real American hero. In 03, we went out and we did our history, and we found Stephen Heath. Stephen is a film producer with Rich Heath Films, and he has made films on Native Americans and won many national awards. He lives right here in Dallas, Fort Worth. He's from Oklahoma. He's Native American, and he served on our board for the last 20 years and been one of our biggest supporters of the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. And he just is a great guy, and we're just so proud to have him on our board of directors. And any of his films that you would watch, you know, the Black Indians, An American Story, The Trail of Tears, and you look at the history of how the Native Americans were treated, he tells that story. So heads up to Stephen Heath. Wow, you know, when we go back and we think about, you know, what happened when we started the museum, Herb Jeffries, known as the Bronze Buckaroo, he was a legendary hero back in the day. He lived to be over 100 years old. He was the lead singer for Duke Ellington, and he felt that Hollywood was not showing Blacks, Native Americans, Hispanic positively in Western history. So that's where I got my history. I grew up thinking that the cowboys were all white, but back in 1930, he made 4 Westerns and the Harlem on the Prairie, Two Gun Man from Harlem, Harlem Rides the Range, and the Bronze Buckaroo. And we have 3 of those 4 movies in our archives within our museum. He came out when we inducted him, and he was a good-looking cowboy, and he hung out with Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and just a great guy. So after we inducted him that year, they inducted him into the Great Western Museum in Oklahoma City. But he wore that belt buckle that we gave him until he passed, but he was a real dear, dear friend. Kathy Williams, 2007 Hall of Fame inductee. About 20 to 25% of our museum is about the Buffalo Soldiers. Kathy Williams was the only female enlisted woman in the Buffalo Soldier troops. She was enlisted as a man, and until she got wounded, they discovered that she was actually a woman. So they gave her honorable discharge, but she from service from 1866 to 1868. So for 2 years until she was wounded, she was a fierce fighter with the Buffalo Soldiers. We have a young lady named Lee Reed that portrays her, and just a real American hero, Kathy Williams. Wow, Rex Purefall, 2007 Hall of Famer, still alive, still doing it, just a good looking cowboy. Gloria and I were up in Kansas City doing a workshop, and he walked into the workshop, and we got to reconnect with him. And that's a picture of him doing his tricks at the in our museum. Had a beautiful horse, and just a great guy, American hero. I remember seeing a picture of him in Jet magazine probably 50 years ago. But we know him. We can pick up the phone and call him. He lives the dream, and we want to thank him for accepting being inducted into our Hall of Fame. Rex Purefall. Yes, Verna Lee Hightower, known as Boots. She was inducted in 2007. She was a rodeo competitor, first African-American woman to become an official member of the Girls Rodeo Association, civil rights activist, and just an excellent bull rider and poster girl for area rodeo. So she was inducted in 2007. Dr. Taylor H. Haynes, MD, his son nominated him. He was an engineer and very active in the ranching industry. So we felt that he needed to be inducted into our Hall of Fame. He has passed, but his son, Dr. Green, comes out and attends the Hall of Fame, but he was a urologist. Wow, you know, Art Burton, oh my God, he's a historian, just retired about 3 years ago, jazz musician, professor of history, historian. He has authored many books. Cherokee Kid is his latest. He wrote The Red, Black, and Deadly. And he was a noted authority on bass reeves. And today he goes all over the world talking about bass reeves and the history of bass reeves. But I had called his name 100 times before we inducted him into the Hall of Fame. And he came to Fort Worth for the Black Libraries Association. And he walked into our museum, and I was just so taken back by him, but he is one of our biggest supporters. He's outside of Chicago and Illinois with his wife, and he comes back for the Hall of Fame, and we're working on a documentary about Bass Reeves and Stagecoach Mary. So he's going to be working with us on that piece to talk about Bass Reeves. Hall of Fame inductees from '09. You know, Ben Kamatara was the great grandson of Quanah Parker. Dean Smith, I mean, what a famous hero. He was in all of John Wayne's movies, and that's where we got our history. He was a gold medal Olympian, but just a good-looking cowboy. He's still alive. He's about 90 years old. He's raising longhorns, and we can call him anytime, and he'll come out. And then just a good friend, Alex Dees. All of these folks that we induct, they keep telling the story, and they believe in what Gloria and I are trying to do to establish the history of the forgotten cowboys. So after this presentation, you're officially given your title that now you're part of Gloria and I's dream of creating an institution to the famous cowboys. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you see Gloria and I riding across the plains, you'll know why you've been bitten by the fact that now you're a believer in the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. These inductees, you know, these are some of our big heroes. You know, Bill Pickett had a stamp made of him. He's one of the most noted cowboys. In the middle is Stagecoach Mary Fields, an African-American woman that won the right to drive the mail, the stagecoach, through the mountains of Montana. And she was 60 years old when she got that title, and she was tough as nails, and somebody was messing with her one time and she knocked him out with one punch. So you didn't mess with Mary. She rode with her dog and her trusty shotgun for 10 years. And if you go to Montana, they celebrate Stagecoach Mary Fields, and excited. There's my friend Bass Reeves, a Black United States Deputy Marshal, deputized by Isaac Parker with 200 other marshals. He was notorious. He was 6'2", wore a black hat, black horse, sidekick was Native American. He knew how to talk and get along with them. That mustache was famous. He did that for 30 years, always got his man. And if you think about the story of his history, that's where the Lone Ranger came out of, Bass Reeves. So great American hero. George Fletcher, he was a rodeo king. He rode in rodeos out in the Midwest, and he rode with Sundance. Can't think of the gentleman that he rode with for sure, but he was a famous cowboy and noted. Again, there's Bass Reed, the most fierce Deputy United States Marshal in the Indian country. You can imagine how tough it was to live in that period, but he was notorious gunfighter, could shoot with both hands, always got his man, and he retired after 30 years as the sheriff of Okmulgee, Oklahoma. This is a picture of some Black cowboys. When you come to our museum, we were given about 34 black and white prints from the Fort Worth Science and History Museum. And this is a picture that hangs in our museum about 1910, showing Black cowboys and their horses. And we've had a couple ranchers come in, and those are just real good looking horses. And just let you know the fact that Black cowboys were very, very active back in the day. Nate Love, rodeo cowboy, author, poet. And the strange thing is he's never been inducted into our Hall of Fame. So if any of you would like to do some research on him, he would be a good person for us to induct. But just a good looking cowboy. His picture hangs all over our museum, and he must have been a tough guy. Ida Wells, just a frontier woman, African-American back in the West. And she was a real frontier, businesswoman, cowgirl back in the West. Black cowgirls of today, when you come to our rodeo, we have 2 rodeos a year. After doing the Cowboys of Color rodeo for roughly 20 years, we went to the Fort Worth Stock Show, and we asked them if they wanted to take it over. They did. So on Martin Luther King's birthday in January, on Monday, there's a Cowboys of Color rodeo, and it's sold out, and people from the Dallas-Fort Worth area come in and celebrate the history of the Cowboys. And they, part of the proceeds benefits our rodeo. But it's just a way of life, you know, of enjoying being a Black cowboy and a Black cowgirl. As I said earlier, about 20% of our museum is about the Buffalo Soldiers. And Lee Reed was president of the Buffalo Soldier Texas chapter. And if you did not know the Buffalo Soldiers, they were given that name by the Native Americans because of the fierceness of their fighting, the color of their skin, the woolliness of their hair. The Native Americans called them Buffalo Soldiers. And they were a large part of protecting the Asians as they built the railroad across this country. In our museum, you'll see uniforms of the Buffalo Soldiers. These are actual saddles and things that you'll see in the museum that we're really, really proud of. The chapter in San Antonio, Buffalo Soldier chapter, had closed down, went out of business. And if you did not know this, if a nonprofit goes out of business, they have to give their artifacts back to the government, or they can give it to another worthwhile institution. Well, they chose us to donate these beautiful pieces of work, uniforms and saddles and boots to our museum. So come on out and see us. You know, we'd like to welcome you to the historic stockyards at any time. You say Tuskegee Airmen, they were like the Buffalo Soldiers. They were fierce fighting military men and women that fought for this country. Well, my next door neighbor started a chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. So I said, Al Henderson, once you get certified, we will give you a wing of our museum, and a wing at our museum is a room. So if you come to our museum, you will learn the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. George Bush did a ceremony for 300 of them in Washington, D.C. And my friend, the congressman, he said, hey, there were about 15 of them that couldn't make it. So we did a ceremony for them at our museum, and it was just unbelievable. We had about 25 of them there. And right now, there's probably less than 100 living Tuskegee Airmen around. They were pilots, and they were fierce fighters, and they protected the bombers in World War II. To learn more about interesting people who helped to settle the early American West, Buffalo Soldiers, Tuskegee Airmen, men and women that were inducted into our Hall of Fame. Visit the Hall of Fame, nmwhm.org, and you'll see a list of about 130 inductees that were inducted into our Hall of Fame. Our number is 817-534-8801. If you call that number, you will get Gloria. Gloria's an awesome executive director. She has so much vision, and she helps to put all this stuff together. And we're so excited to have this opportunity to present in front of you. I will open it up for questions of me and Gloria, but thank you for the opportunity to present this morning.
Thank you so much, Jim. Outstanding. Talk about forgotten history. I've learned so much in this brief time, and I commend you. We encourage folks to, if you have questions, type them into the chat, or you can unmute and pose your question. I did want to ask a couple of things. You mentioned the Cowboys of Color Museum in the spring, or actually in Martin Luther King birthday. Is there a second museum in the fall or summer, or when does that, the second rodeo, I mean?
Ron, what happened was when we moved into the stockyards, Hub Baker was who's in our Hall of Fame and a dear friend. And when we moved into the stockyards, he was one of the main reasons that we came up there, him, Steve Murrin, and Pam Minnick. And he ran the Coliseum, the Fort Worth Coliseum, the oldest indoor climate control Coliseum in the world. So we decided to do a Hall of Fame rodeo on the Friday before we do our Hall of Fame. We know 100 years from now when our Hall of Fame will be. It's also held on the National Day of the American Cowboy. It's the 4th Saturday in July. So on that Friday evening, we do a rodeo in the stockyards, which is about 4 blocks from our museum. And that's where our rodeo will be held. It's a great weekend to come visit Fort Worth to see the herd, the Longhorns walking down Exchange. And that's our second rodeo that'll be held on the 23rd of July. Thank you for asking that question, Ron.
Very good. And, we know COVID disrupted everything in 2020. And so is the museum now open? What are the hours? Should people Google first? What's the status of access to the museum these days?
What happened March of 2021 when the pandemic hit? We were open and going, and children coming in and many tours. So we closed along with all the other museums and businesses in Fort Worth. And we had in March the Women of the West exhibit. And that exhibit is still up. We are open. We just opened for groups and individuals that want to come through. We had 25 kids from Missouri that came in from 4-H, and I dusted off my presentation and it was great. They were so respectful. And they sat on the floor, and they were 9th graders to 12th graders. And they were just like, I always ask the question, did anybody learn anything? All 24 of them raised their hand. They were so respectful. But yes, we are open. 2 days ago, a lady was on the way to the John Wayne exhibit. She saw my sign. She came in. My office is on the 2nd floor. And she said, Mr. Austin, I'd like to see your museum. So I gave her a tour. And then I have a podcast also, Jim Austin Online. And I interview people on that. And I'm getting pretty good at it. I've done about 30 of them. And I said, yeah, I'll give you a tour, but you got to do a podcast. So she was a big time residential realtor and CPA, man. We chopped it up, had such a good time. So she said, Mr. Austin, I want to take you to lunch. So what's the best lunch that you would take the president? I said, H3. So we went up and we ate some ribs and salmon and had a good time. And it was just an occasion. So if you're in town, you call that 534-8801 and Gloria will call me and I'll meet you at the museum. So we're not officially open, but we'll be opening for sure back in September when the kids come back into school. But everybody on the presentation, yes, we are open.
Appreciate that. We do have a question from the chat, and that is about Hispanic Vaqueros. Are the Vaqueros represented in the museum? Have there been any Hall of Fame inductees, or is there information about the Vaquero?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've inducted probably about 4 or 5, but yeah, the Vaqueros are very much represented in the museum. You'll see their saddles and artwork and pictures and stuff like that. But yeah, you have to, when we decided to talk about Black, Hispanic, Native American, Asian cowboys and white cowboys, we just felt that because of the importance of back in the West, because they all rode together, and the stockyards is where the cattle trail drive started. So there's so much history up here, and we are one of the many museums. And if you come to Fort Worth has one of the largest collections of museums, second only to Washington, D.C.
Jim, I am the treasurer of the National Day of the Cowboy organization, and I appreciate that you have your Hall of Fame ceremony on the 4th Saturday of July, but I wonder if you have a flag from the National Day of the Cowboy.
No.
All right.
We
I
don't.
will take it on my initiative to talk with Bethany about getting you a flag.
And I would love to share that with you, our Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Our Hall of Fame has moved around. We're at the Spring Hills Hotel in the Stockyards, 2 blocks from us. It's a brand new, beautiful Marriott property, and we invite you out to come. But thank you, Tom. This kind of stuff, as we spread our wings and we fly, these opportunities to present and let people know about this museum is very important, because people tell us all the time, I did not know. And this is an important opportunity for Gloria and I to share our story, because this is a good point, Tom. Yeah, the National Day of the American Cowboy, and we're part of the celebration. And if you did not know, and Tom probably could speak on this, so Ron, he would probably be a great speaker to talk about the National Day, because there's 40 or 50 or 60 cities that celebrate the National Day of the American Cowboy. We do it right here in Fort Worth, Texas.
That's a great idea. And that's coming up next month. So I do have another question. This is from Gene Chavez, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. His question is, have you done a Mexican rodeo? But the word appears to be charreada, and C-H-A-R-R-I-A-D-A. And Gene, I don't know, maybe you ought to unmute. What exactly is a Mexican rodeo, and how does that differ from the traditional rodeo we see here?
Yes. Gloria will tell you that Jim has come up with a lot of stuff, and we've done a Mexican rodeo. We did it on a Sunday, and the Fort Worth Stock Show, they do a Hispanic Mexican rodeo. So it's a little bit different in how the bulls come out and the history, but the Hispanic Chamber, they do a fiesta night for the Hispanic rodeo, and one of our inductees is Jerry Diaz. We inducted his father, and we inducted Jerry, and he's just a beautiful cowboy that comes out of San Antonio. But yeah, we've done it once, but Gloria reminded me after we grew the rodeo to 6 cities, she said, Jim, it's about the museum. So I finally got smart and said, hey, 6 rodeos was wearing me out. Then the last one we did at Fort Hood, she said, I'm not going. I said, okay, well, Jim, if you don't understand it right now, if Gloria is not going with you to the rodeo, it's time to pull back. So we do the 2 rodeos in Fort Worth. And I'm just, I'm a visionary, and Gloria said, let's get some of this vision completed so we can stay alive. But yeah.
Gene, anything you would add about the Mexican rodeo?
Well, I thank you for addressing it, and it is a sight to see. I know that when the American Royal was here in Kansas City, various Hispanic organizations brought Mexican charros, as we call them, and they did an amazing job of performing not only typical calf roping and bull riding and bronco riding, but they also did synchronized horse dancing is probably the best word for it. They do a beautiful job. And we actually have a group here in the Kansas City area of Mexican recent immigrants who own horses, and they do charreadas here in our area. So that might be something. I understand you're not taking on more rodeos to concentrate on the museum, but which is wonderful, and thank you for this presentation. Yeah, that's if people have an opportunity to see that, and they often ride in various parades that we have here in Kansas City. Unfortunately, the American Royal is no longer what it used to be, but they always had performances here in Kansas City and showed their skills as vaqueros.
And one of the things that we do during the stock show and the escaramuzas, and we have probably about 20 escaramuzas troops, rodeo performing artists, and these are young Hispanic women dressed in beautiful dress, and they ride side saddle. Yeah, and that's part of the Hispanic heritage for sure. But yeah, thank you, Gene, for your comments.
Right.
Outstanding. As we're reaching our time boundary here, I see some good information being exchanged in the chat. I feel like I should ask the question that Jim asked at the end of his student presentation: who's learned something today? And I think we could all raise our hands. It's been very educational and interesting, and we greatly appreciate you and the way you're sharing this history of the forgotten cowboys. So we tip of the hat to Gloria and Jim, and we ask you to keep up doing the good work, and we look forward to seeing you at the museum in Fort Worth.
And I always have to say this because my passion and Gloria's passion is so strong, and being married to Gloria for 25 years and her being my partner, is that she had to tell me that, Jim, over 50% of my time was spent on working on the museum. But I want to let all of you know that I'm Jim Austin. I'm the broker with the Austin Company Commercial Real Estate. If you got anything you want to rent, lease, buy, send them to me, because that's what I do. That's my real job. That pays my bills, and that's what I do. And my wife said, Jim, I don't want to be out at the grocery store picking up aluminum cans, because you cannot get your passion in control. So now when I meet people, that's what I tell them first. I am Jim Austin, the Fresh Prince of commercial real estate. So you know I have a museum, but please, if you know somebody coming to town, I do real estate. And I've told my wife I'm going to start making sure people know about what I do for a living.
All right, very good, Jim. You're an entrepreneur as well as passionate about the West. We appreciate that greatly. It's time to talk about our speaker for next month's Cattle Trail Showcase, and for that, we will turn to our showcase chair, Lonnie Stephen. Lonnie.
Thank you, Ron. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully. Okay. Next month, we're going to have as a speaker Scott Metelko from the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center in Duncan. I think somebody mentioned that while we're waiting to get on the video, how great a center that is. And they do some really interesting thing with art incorporated into their museum. And so we're actually going to have a field tour that they conduct and show some different things that they do with the museum. So looking forward to that. And then in August, just get another month ahead, we're going to actually make it to Abilene. We're going to get our cattle up to the Abilene and load them up on the train and get them on the locomotive and get them ready to ship out. So thank you all very much for participating today. And Ron, thank you.
Thanks, Lonnie. So tune in next Friday, next month. That second Friday of July. That'll be just a week or so before the National Day of the Cowboys. So make sure you join us, be watching for that. And we appreciate you being part of our Cattle Trail Showcase today. To close our program, this is Ron Wilson, Poet Laureate, saying thanks for taking time to join us in this place, and come on back next month for our Cattle Trail Showcase. Thanks again. Happy trails, everybody.
Thank you all.